Hello and welcome to video number 4. We're going to talk about the webinar email schedule. I'm going to go to a mind map so that you can see the full layout before the webinar and after the webinar. So let's move on to that mind map and I'll show you exactly what you need to do. Okay, so here's the mind map, as you can see here. And everything before the webinar, I'm going to call it reminders, and everything after the webinar, we're going to call it follow-ups. So I've color-coded it so that we've got it to be orange, and then we've got it to be red for the follow-ups. The initial email is basically going to say, thank you for signing up, and here's the checklist. The reason why I want you to include a checklist or an action list, a document, a PDF, or something that you will actually be covering in the webinar. So it all leads up to this point. So the whole goal here is not to just give them a checklist or a PDF document or whatever. That it's not just to give it to them. The whole goal is to get them to use it, to take those mini actions along the way, because when you pull out that checklist and they've already got that checklist done, they get to follow along and use exactly what they checked off, exactly what they did, whatever the homework was as part of the checklist or the document, which leads up into the webinar. And at that point in time, they've taken so many mini actions that they've become mini commitments. And when you use that on the webinar, and it ultimately leads in to whatever you're trying to sell or product or service that you're trying to promote, your conversions are actually a lot higher because everything is congruent from the first to the webinar. So you got initial email here. What I recommend is probably follow up on the same week with some sort of checklist tips. So you can tell them, hey, if you haven't had a chance to grab the checklist, here it is. And make sure you give some tips about the checklist. So give your best tip. And then after that, what you want to do is you want to follow up closer to the webinar. So this could be like right after this here, or it could be a couple days. And then right here, this could be a day or 2 days before the webinar. And then, of course, you want to have a 1 hour before the webinar, so that even though people have it on their calendars, people forget. I've done it. I'm sure you've done it. I'm sure many people have done it. And they're thinking, oh no, I missed it. So that definitely helps them. Even though you have all of these, they're actually geared to give people value, to help people by reminding them. So as long as you're giving value along the way, most people don't care because they initially signed up wanting to receive more information about that. In this day and age, everybody's just doing a pitch fest. So you want to make sure you give value along the way. So a lot of people, what they do is just have that initial email, and then maybe 1 hour before the webinar. But up to this point, most of the time, people forget. People forget that they even signed up for your webinar. So you want to make sure that you follow up throughout if your goal is to, of course, increase your conversions. If your goal is just to have a webinar, webinar, and your goal is not to really increase conversions, you got an educational webinar, then, of course, this would be different. But if your goal, which is, I'm sure, the majority of you, is that you want to increase your conversions, then this follow-up series will greatly help you. So, of course, on the webinar, you can use a checklist, you can go over the checklist, and then after that, you want to have a replay typically about 24 hours after. You can email the full list. You can email the people that were unable to show up. So this is 24 hours after the webinar. Now, the second follow-up in red is a replay follow-up 72 hours before your close. So depending on when you want to close the offer, that's when you want to send it out. And then, of course, you want to send out a follow-up 24 hours before midnight. So for whatever day that you're going to close it on, you want to integrate that into here. Now, all along right here, you generally want to use a countdown timer to increase scarcity. So I hope you enjoyed that. Feel free to jot everything down as you go and customize it to your own needs. In the next video, I'm going to go in a lot more detail about the orange area here, and I'll show you exactly what email templates you can use.